Welcome to another episode of Food Chain with me, Prince Apia. In this edition, we shall be talking about diseases that are affecting cassava, specifically cassava mosaic disease. We'll also be talking about how it can be controlled or managed. We'll be speaking to a lot of stakeholders, scientists, researchers to understand how the industry is and what can be done to assess the full potential of cassava in Ghana. My name is Prince Apia. Stay with us.
The plant is not growing the normal height. You see that the nose, that's the length within the inner nose should be longer, but you see that it's like everything is compressed. It makes the plant. You see the typified by the petiole color. For instance, here you see the mosaic, the yellowish patterns in the leaf. You see the shortened internal length. Normally, it shouldn't be like this. It should be a bit wider. But because of the presence of disease, it's not able to grow normally. And everything has become reduced and stunted. You see the leaf distortion. See how the leaves are distorted. Normally, cassava leaf is not like this. So when you, some people will see this and they say some people like it because it looks maybe different, and some people say it's nice. But if you have it and you leave it on your farm, it will have effect on the productivity of the plant, because the photosynthesis will not be produced enough so that the plant will grow in a normal form and size, which subsequently will affect the tubers that will be produced in the soil.
This is Dr. Alan Opon, a plant virologist with the Crops Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in Ghana. Cassava mosaic disease is an age-old disease which continues to cause havoc to the crop in almost every cassava field.
The petiole of the leaf. So the color is different from the previous ones we saw, but the symptoms on the leaf are virtually the same. Mosaic will result in the yield being low. There are a lot of diseases affecting cassava. We have those caused by fungi and those caused by viruses, and there are other pests also. The fungi ones are mainly rots. They cause rots, and we have bacteria as well, leaf spots. So the fungal disease also cause abrasions on the stem, which affects the planting material, anthracnose I'm talking about. But the most important ones are the viruses. That's a cassava mosaic virus, which is endemic virtually throughout Africa. And then the cassava brown streak virus disease, which is currently not being detected in any of the West African countries. But in Eastern and some countries in Central Africa, they are present and causing havoc. Now, each of these diseases have their own way of presenting themselves. For the viruses, they mainly present in form of symptoms which we see with our naked eyes. For instance, we can see the mosaic. If you talk about cassava mosaic virus, a typical example is what we see on this leaf. They are mosaic. You see, cassava leaf is green, but when the mosaic comes, you see some yellowish patches within the leaves. And what it does is that it affects the photosynthetic ability of the plant, and consequently it will affect the yield. It also results in the leaf sometimes becoming smaller, distorted, and virtually unproductive. And then the stems also becomes shortened, what we call stunting. So the plant, instead of maybe growing up to a height of 1.5 meters, you go to a field that should be expressing a height of 1.5 meters. With the incidence of the cassava mosaic disease, it could be maybe less than one meter. And when you see those symptoms, then it's telling you that you have that disease on the field. For the brown streak, It also presents similar symptoms as the mosaic, but that one is normally under you find it under the old leaves. The difference between the brown streak and the cassava mosaic is that the mosaic is normally found on the top leaves, but the brown streak is normally on the bottom leaves.
Tackling this canker of a disease is important for the growth of the cassava business and its value chain drivers.
So, what is the extent of damage can the cassava mosaic disease have on a farmer's yield?
It depends on the time at which the disease occurs. If it occurs at the initial stage of the plant growth, then if the plant is seriously susceptible to the disease, then the yield loss is going to be very, very high. In some cases, it's been reported of up to 100%, sometimes 90%, 80, 70, depending on the variety itself and the timing of the infection. So if infection is late, then the yield reduction is going to be less. If the infection is very early at the plant's growth, then the yield loss is going to be very, very high, because the severity of the disease will be high, because the variety that you are cultivating is highly susceptible. But if the variety is resistant, then it will not matter much when the disease occurs. The plant will be able to grow and then recover, and then it will be able to get you the yield that you require. It's prevalent virtually everywhere in Ghana. Surveys that we've done over the last maybe 5 to 6 years across the country, there's no agroecology that we haven't come across cassava infected with the mosaic disease. It's been there for decades, and what is a little bit strange about it is that we have different strains of viruses that is causing it. So you go to a certain place, you have the disease being more severe than maybe at another location. But we are now finding which of the places will have most of the virulent strains of the virus, and which places will have the maybe less virulent strains of the virus. So I would say we have it everywhere, but in some places the severity of the disease is very high, whereas in other places it's a bit mild. But you can find it in maybe 1 or 2 fields against 100 fields or that kind of activity.
Researchers say the one way to manage or control it is use new improved varieties.
The management basically is to do what we call use improved varieties, because like viruses, we know most viral diseases, especially on crops, you don't apply any chemical to hope to see that the plant will be cured. It will be a waste of time. So the best way is normally depend on having a variety that is bred for resistance to the disease. That is the number one option. The other options which you can apply but may not be efficient is sometimes you have to do what you call farm hygiene. You shouldn't allow your fields to be weedy, because these diseases are transmitted by insects, especially whiteflies. So if you have a field that is not weedy, you have a lot of these whiteflies there, and you have new fields and then maybe planted old fields along it, there's that tendency that the whiteflies will go and feed on the old plants and then take the viruses, and they will come and infect your healthy plants. So those kind of management practices also help in a way to manage it. And then the soil, no, there are no soil, you only have to improve your soil fertility. Because if the virus disease comes and the soil fertility is also good, it gives the plant a kind of a boost. So if the plant has a good nutrition, it's like any living organism. If you have good nutrition, infection is often difficult. So like plants, if your soil has good fertility, then when the virus comes, the plant is able to grow such that the nutrient status of the plant will be able to sort of overcome the disease in a way. But if the fertility is not good and the virus is there and your variety is susceptible, then the disease incidence is going to be high.
Ghana is one of the leading producers of cassava in the world. This means the needed attention must be given this crop.
Yeah, my name is JoyNews. I'm a plant breeder. Yeah, the cassava industry now is growing very, very fast. Until 2007, most of the cassava grown in Ghana were the local ones, which are the land races, because the major market at that time was for local food preparation. But coming out of what the former President Kufuor established at Podriasi, which is the PSI, yes, it opened the market for people to look at how best they can process cassava into different products. And with the coming in of President Akufo-Addo and his economic team, they realized that Ghana could make a lot of money in cassava production and processing. And so now the market is focusing mainly on processing of cassava into different products like flour, starch for industrial uses. People are also still processing cassava into gari and other food uses. But now the focus is moving gradually from gari into flour, starch for industrial uses. So that is what farmers and stakeholders in the cassava industries are now looking at and trying to focus their attention on, so that we can develop the cassava just like we have developed the cocoa in Ghana. And some of us believe that if equal attention is given to cassava, within the next 5 to 10 years, cassava will overtake cocoa in terms of the agricultural gross domestic products for the country. So the future is very bright. And so we must also look at how we can convince the farmers to look at the varieties that are high yielding but cannot be used for some of our local food dishes. And when we talk about the local food dishes, we focus our attention mainly on people in the forest areas like Ashanti region, Brongahafo, and then part of east and western regions, because there the most important uses of cassava is for fufu. And so we cannot develop the industries to come and compete with the users in the local or for the households. And so the researchers have developed some varieties that we cannot use for some of the local foods, that is to or pound as fufu and eat. And for me, that is very good. It's one of the progress that we have made as far as the industry is concerned, so that we will look at how we can expand production of those materials to feed the emerging markets, the processing markets. And so the industry, yes, the prospects are very high, and we believe that if we can get the right markets, then we can advance the cassava industry to another level that will be highly beneficial to the country, and it will also support the economy very, very well, because the market, the prospect out there is very, very huge.
Cassava is a major staple in Ghana. It has so many uses, especially for the lower middle income people. Researchers say, among other things, getting improved planting materials is critical for the industry as well.
And let me also emphasize here that people think that cassava depletes the soils, but research over time has shown that if you plant cassava and then you harvest and then you don't carry the leaves and all these things out and you leave it there, it is going to improve the soil fertility. Yes, to the extent that you will cut down the use of fertilizer when you do that. And then you can also go into some of the traditional systems that our fathers used to, and that is what they call the proka. They normally slash, they don't burn. They allow the trash to sort of decay and then go back into the soil. And once that is done, the soil gets back the nutrients that the weeds or the plants picked. And so they are able to give back to whichever crop that you put there. And these are, and other things are some of the things that we're trying to, well, bring to the attention of the farmers and people who are now coming into the cassava industry, so that we can improve upon the system and then still get the yields to be very, very high. Clean the materials using tissue culture facilities that we have available at our biotech lab. And so for some of the materials that the farmers still are holding on to, we bring samples here, clean them, and then give them back to the farmers, but at a very small fee. And that is what at times is pushing the farmers back. But it is worth getting cleaner materials from us than you using the old materials which are not, well, yielding as much as you can. And studies have shown that if you use the clean materials, even if they are local ones, the land races, and then you clean them, you can get up to 40% more than your local material. And for cassava, if you are harvesting, say, 10 tons per hectare, and then you move from 10 tons to 40 tons, it is very, very, very significant. What we have been doing at crop research here is that most of the improved varieties that are now available for farmers were the local varieties that we collected from farmers, brought them here, improved upon them through, well, crosses with the diseases, resistant materials, and then high yield materials. And we are giving them back to them. What that means is that if a farmer had, say, a variety like Debo, now you have Debo throughout the country, but they are not the same. There are different Debos depending on where, well, they are collected from. We brought all of them to our station here and then crossed them with the improved high-yielding disease-resistant varieties. And for some of them, they have the same characteristics, the same physical appearance as the local varieties. The difference is that they are high-yielding, they are very vigorous, and they are not, well, susceptible to the African Cassava Mosaic, which is very, very endemic and which is devastating our cassava industry.
The uses of the cassava crop in recent times have been restricted to domestic consumptions like preparing fufu and other local dishes. Professor JoyNews again.
We should look at, well, developing varieties that are high yielding, because if you go out to compete with the international community, you know, cassava is not only grown in Ghana. Ghana is the number 3 producer of cassava in Africa and the 5th in the world, which means there are other players out there and they are all producing cassava. Some of them are expanding, well, the land areas. Others are using, well, the products, the varieties, to increase yields. And Ghana, where do we stand? We have been expanding our fields, but we realize that that is not going to help develop the industry, because now the lands are competing with others. People are using the lands for, well, buildings and all those things. And so we cannot continue to expand our farms. So the other option is to look at the varieties that will produce high yields per unit area. And that is what we are focusing our attention now. And once the scientists are able to achieve that, then the next step will be for the farmers to also buy into it. And the farmers, we should note that they are also businessmen. No farmer is now planting cassava for the sake of it. They are planting it for the different markets that are available, and then they use some or the excess to feed themselves and then their well, communities.
You are still watching Food Chain on JoyNews with me, Prince Apia. We are still here with Dr. Alenopong, and we've been talking about Cassava Mosaic disease. At this point, we want to talk about the WAVE project and understand what the intention is and what are the initiatives available in recent times.
The WAVE is an acronym for the Central and West Africa Virus Epidemiology. There is a WAVE for root and tuber crops project. It is being implemented in 10 countries in West and Central Africa. And the goal of the project is to improve food security. And the name suggests root and tuber crops. But the purposes of Ghana, the emphasis and the focus is on cassava. And over the period, it has focused on viral diseases, trying to identify the distribution of disease in the country, the types of strains that we have in the country, as well as educate the general public. Because it will surprise you to know that when even extension officers, they go to the field and they see symptoms of the disease, they think it's nothing. They don't know it. They don't know that actually what they see is what is affecting the productivity of cassava. So one of the objectives of the WAVE project is to educate the farming community, extension officers, policymakers, everybody interested in cassava, to highlight the importance of the cassava viral diseases, to make sure that farmers use improved cassava planting materials that are resistant to the disease, and with the ultimate objective of improving the productivity of cassava. Another key objective is that we've all heard of the cassava brown streak virus disease. Presently, that disease has not been detected anywhere within West Africa. But like I said initially, it has been detected in East Africa. It's moving westwards. Now it's in Congo and it's spreading. That disease is more devastating than the Cassava Mosaic that we have presently here. There are other types of the Cassava Mosaic. The Ugandan type, that's more devastating, but that one is also not being found here in West Africa. So the one key objective of the project is also do kind of pre-breeding activities to come out with identify potential varieties that can resist these diseases and maintain the planting materials, and such that when the disease, if we don't pray for it, God forbid, when it comes here, then we have these materials available that we can give to farmers to plant to help control any of those things. Toured the whole country, visited farmers' fields to look for, see if we can identify the disease maybe in any of the fields. Apart from that, we do public awareness campaign. We organize farmer field days to sensitize farmers, describe the disease to them, for them to be like participants in a kind of a surveillance activity, so that when on their own they go to their fields, we teach them to monitor. When they see any disease symptoms that are not familiar with them, they should just be in contact with us or any of the MOFA offices. They will get in contact with us. We go there, we take samples, we analyze them and see if those diseases are anything that we don't know of, and it's like what we are talking about. Besides that, for the breeding part, like I was saying, we take the germplasm that we have here. We take in virtually all the release varieties we have, aside others that we collected from farmers. We send them to the hotspot countries. They are also our collaborators, like countries like in Uganda, and they are doing the screening for us. And from time to time, we monitor, and they also report to the project their findings. And once they are able to make a headway, the cassava breeding is a long process. Sometimes Prof will tell you it can take 10 years before we come up with a variety. So it's a gradual process, but they are doing it. So we hope that at a point in time will come, they will indicate to us that which types of varieties have the resistance gene in it. And therefore, when any eventuality occurs, then we can do rapid multiplication and distribute to farmers. In the month of May, we call it a caravan. We are moving into 4 locations, but the locations have been carefully selected that it falls within the different agroecologies. So it will start in 5th May, and it will be in the eastern region at Asisiwa. We selected that area because that area has a lot of cassava farmers. From there, it will come to Wenchi in the Bono district. That will be on the 10th. And then on the 12th, we will be at Amantin. And then on the 18th, the last of the activities, we will hold it at Akachi. What we do is that we educate farmers, general public, we do media, sensitize the media about the various diseases of cassava, with emphasis on the cassava brown streak and the cassava mosaic, the need for farmers to use improved planting materials, do regular field monitoring to observe any strange symptoms they find on their fields, and liaise with the extension agents of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, and then report to the research organizations. And then if we find anything strange, then the processes, mechanisms that have been put in place to deploy any resistant varieties that we might have found in our breeding activities, so sent to them for farmers to adapt and plant, with the aim of maintaining the high standards of productivity that cassava should have.
The industry therefore requires all hands on deck for both local farmers to adapt improved varieties to control this mosaic disease, then take advantage of the numerous benefits thereof.
And I believe that we can get a lot from cassava if the needed attention is given. And let nobody think that cassava doesn't need good growing environment. Cassava requires good growing environment that we will put our maize and cowpeas and other crops into. The only thing we have to do is that it must be given the needed attention and support in terms of good land preparation, in terms of fertilizer application, and good improved planting materials. And then once we get all these things, we shouldn't forget that we have also trained people who are supposed to provide technical backstopping. These are the MOFA extension agents. Cassava is a crop that we shouldn't forget that if we focus our attention on within the next 10 to 20 years, cassava will become our cocoa.
Cassava, a very important crop in our country. Arguably, a crop with a lot of potential, a lot of uses. Its industrialization will mean a lot to Ghana's economy. If the relevant stakeholders put in the necessary measures to ensure that this crop does justice to Ghana's economy, of course, it will be good for everyone. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. My name is Prince Apia, and until we meet again in our next episode, thank you for staying with us.